All right, welcome to LangTime Chat, episode 13. We are starting year 2 of the podcast. And David's here too, I promise. Just very silently.
Look, it's a rabbit.
It is a rabbit, and
It looks better from this side. It looks better from this side.
it looks better if we're not on a podcast.
Well, that's going to be tough because today's topic is shadow puppets, and it was going to be highly visual.
I only know one.
Let's see it. Let's see it. Show everybody. Everybody wants to. Yeah, see?
I just did a, would you call that a bird or a butterfly?
Yeah, it's a bird. That's the bird's second appearance on this podcast, as we will recall.
Yes, it is, except I think last time it appeared, it also made some noises because it was your bird. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you put in some caca noises. Oh God, I should have turned down my volume. I was not ready for that.
That's mine. Let's hear yours.
No, that's good. I think that is the ultimate bird sound. So
reciprocity, come on.
I never guaranteed that. Okay, so today David is taking over the topic, and I have no idea what we're talking about other than bird calls and shadow puppets. So I am excited to find out what the topic is.
Well, I thought today we could, so first another little plug for our patrons that aren't there yet. We have a Patreon Discord now, which you can be a part of if you're a patron. Do you know like how many patrons? Like it's really active, but I don't know how many patrons are actually on the Discord. Do you?
I can definitely check if you want to keep talking and leading.
No, I'm already checking.
8, 9, 12, 13, 28. We have 28.
We have 28 people on the Discord, but only but we have 47 patrons, so it means some of you are not joining in the fun, and that's fine for right now. But we
may not have Discord.
We will be levying fines and sanctions. So
okay, outright lie. I just want to point that out. You don't have to join.
Okay, all right.
But you should if you have Discord. If you don't, then I totally get it.
Yeah, you just need to. I mean, you don't even have to have it. You just need to hit your monthly minimum for the number of Discord posts in order to qualify for credit, right?
And David is keeping track of all of it.
The same way I keep track of everything, just in my head.
Oh, God. And we know how well that goes from week to week in live streams.
Extremely well. I just to want to warn everybody, it wasn't full screen, but it is now.
What is?
My Zoom. It's full screen now.
Oh, okay. Because you know that doesn't affect their view, just
No.
Okay.
Just me.
Okay. So you were just excited about full screen mode. Gotcha.
Now I'm bigger and I don't like it.
I mean, that's what happens when you go full screen.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, last night I was up until 6:30 in the morning kerning a new font.
Yes, I hear the adventures of kerning are in the details.
Yeah, I discovered at the very end, right after I produced the font version 1.0 of the font, that one of the characters that was in there, it was like, oh no, this looks terrible. It has to change immediately. And furthermore, that character had its own kerning class. So when I changed it, it folded into another kerning class, which meant that just added needless minutes. So I kerned that class that I ended up deleting with,
And if nobody knows what kerning is, you should look it up, Kerning, because it is very, very interesting in terms of getting shapes to fit together. No, I just realized it was a very up view. Whatever. We're on a podcast. They're listening to us. They don't need to know about our camera angles.
I think they do. I mean, I'm at 89 right now. Not 88, 87.5. No, 88. I'm at 88. What are you
I'm
at?
not even, I don't even know. I'd have to like turn my laptop sideways to truly see how much of an angle I have, and that seems like a lot of work. So instead, I'm going to let you take over the topic now.
So yes, following on our patron suggestion, I thought it would be fun to talk about board games and role-playing games today, and our history with them, and as they interweave with language, since I think that's what we're supposed to be talking about, right? Language or something.
I mean, really, that is the focus of what we do at LangTime Studio. So yes, that would be good.
Yeah. I think though, to start us off, I'll just monologue for 45 minutes. So you
Cool.
just
I'm gonna go take a nap.
sit back. That's fine. That's fine. I periodically though you will hear.
I'll be sure to just, turn off the sound.
Want to make sure that you're listening. But no, I did want to mention, so I know that I've talked about it on the stream before, but the entire thing that we're doing with LangTime Studio, right, is we're creating languages for a board game that I have planned, which of course, Jesse has never played, due to it, not existing. Also, it's kind of difficult. Though I should tell you this, I don't know why I didn't mention this before. I actually did mock up a version, not like with graphics or anything, but I've mocked up a version, a playable version in tabletop. Shoot, simulator. I think it's tabletop simulator. It's on Steam, and there's two big ones, right? And it's the one that's less where the icon is less pretty, I guess. I think it's tabletop simulator. But anyway, you can use tabletop simulator, and if two people have Steam and tabletop simulator, you can actually play board games over the internet.
That's
You can
super
just
cool.
make them
I'd
and do
never
whatever
heard
you
of
want.
that.
Yeah, it's and it's very I don't want to say low tech, but it's almost like it's a physics engine. So for example, like you can make the dice, right? Which I did, and you can put whatever you want on them. But it's like you just have these little disembodied hands. And so to roll the dice, it's not like there's a roll the dice button. You actually have to go and pick it up like this and drop it.
Oh, that would throw me off. Okay.
Yeah. But there's also they also add this fantastic button, which is a flip the table button, out of anger. So you can just go throw everything off.
Necessary for any board game.
Way. Yeah. Anyway, so going back to the days of my youth, I had a Nintendo and a Super Nintendo growing up, and a Game Boy. Like I was just an all Nintendo family. Jessie, of course, grew up with all the systems the moment that they came out. She was very, tech savvy and fashion forward.
That sounds exactly like my childhood.
Yeah, you're kind of a trendsetter for rural Missouri.
Yeah, I need to qualify for rural Missouri.
Yeah.
In case people don't, if this is your first month experiencing LangTime, maybe we should point out here how sarcastic David is being, not about his own background with technology, but about my childhood and how I did not have any technology outside of TV that, for a long time didn't even have a remote, just a little turn dial.
I know you really had an incredible childhood for somebody whose father was a professional baseball player, which I don't think everybody knows, but they do now.
No, but that was a very short-lived. He played very briefly with the Cardinals, very briefly. Mm-hmm. So that was not. It's not like I grew up the enchanted child of, I don't know.
It was the St. Louis Cardinals, though. I mean, it's.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually, if you say, oh, my dad was a pro baseball player, it's he played for the Montgomery Biscuits. which
is awesome.
Which is a real team, by the way. Look up that logo. You'll be pleased.
I will definitely look that up.
It's a biscuit.
I would hope so. Otherwise, they are misnamed.
Yeah. Really gonna need to do something with the other side of my hair. I thought this side went well. This side did not go as well.
So I didn't mean to derail you talking about Nintendos and gaming systems.
Oh, right.
Except to point out that if you don't know us yet, that's something to know.
Right. Okay. So, and I wouldn't say it was sarcasm, because of course sarcasm comes from the Greek and it means to cut. I wasn't trying to hurt. I was trying to just lie, so that to trick people, but not you. I mean, because you lived it. I can't trick you,
No.
right? Yeah. Oh, by the way, real quick, before you can get me your social security number, I need to register this podcast.
Yeah, sorry,
I have mine. I just need yours.
Well, mine is the same as yours. You didn't know that?
Oh, wasn't that nice? They cycled around. A lot of births between January and May of 1981. I guess everybody was just going to town as they were anxiously, breathlessly awaiting what was going to happen with the Iran-Contra scandal. What a time 1980 must have been.
Going back.
Yeah.
I will keep you on topic.
Thank you. My friend Blaine had a TurboGrafx 16, but he also had a Genesis. And one of the games on the Genesis was called Shining Force. There was Shining Force 1 and 2. And it's one of the most amazing video games I have ever seen. It's oft been replicated in terms of its style, in my mind, somewhat less successfully. But what it essentially is, it's a turn-based strategy combat game. So I think, if I've got that right. So for those who are familiar with more modern games, I think XCOM is similar, and Fire Emblem, that's it. I played Fire Emblem for a bit. I couldn't get into it. I don't know why. Anyway, but Shining Force has one of the, I don't want to say one of the worst world building aspects I've ever seen, and really poor graphics even for the time, at least with the overhead map. But it's the system that is just so amazing. You play a bunch of different characters in a little army, and there are just a whole bunch of different battles. That's what the whole game is. There's some RPG stuff in the middle, but mainly it's for the battles. And you play one character at a time, and you move your characters across the map, and the bad guys move theirs across the map, and you fight each other. You attempt to beat the bad guys. It was really interesting. They had embedded in this, even though I'm sure nobody ever wrote this down, but their world building was really strange. They had centaurs, and all the centaurs were always knights. And then they were just random, there's one person that looks like a horse girl. And then they're elves, and the elves are always archers. And then they're bird people that whack people with swords. There was a wolf guy in one of the games. Actually, I think both of the games, there was a wolf guy in both of the games. The turtle man, all kinds of stuff like this. And there was also randomly a ninja, and then also a samurai. They just took from everywhere and just threw it all in there. And a flying jellyfish who could do really good magic. And I always called him either Mr. Doxlow or Mr. Doxlow, because you can name the characters.
It feels like you're describing 8 different games right now.
I know, but they're all the same game. It's really amazing. Anyway, so it was really fun. And I've found ways to play it over the years again and again, originally on an emulator on a computer. Then they had one version that you could download for the phone, and then that one got outmoded, and then they got a new one, and so I have that. I don't know. And it's just, and then they had one for the Game Boy Advance that came out that was even better. Even though I didn't have a Game Boy Advance, I had the emulator. I was very cheap in college. But it was just, it was that aspect of turn-based combat that I found so much fun. And so I thought it would do very well as a board game. And it was partially inspired by a game that my friend Ash had called Hero Quest that was somewhat similar, but much more RPG based. And essentially now we have the grown-ups version of that in Gloomhaven. But I wanted to, oh dear.
Do we need to
I'm
pause?
gonna ignore that. I'm gonna, no. I mean, oh boy. No. All right. So, okay. So, yeah. So I wanted to create a game like that, right? And I found a way to crack the computerized aspect of it, or the, you know, the I don't know what the word is for this. The part where the computer does it, you know.
Oh,
But
sure.
essentially, like
an automated opponent kind of thing.
Yes, the automated thing. Okay, so the thing that the computer does that's so you know, that makes it so fun is that every single one of your characters is a speed stat, and so essentially the computer, it goes in rounds, but it decides who attacks because it just looks up whoever has the next highest speed. Of course, it's a board game that can be incredibly tedious, right?
Right.
Because you could just imagine every single round is like, okay, who's next? Let me look, because like, especially if you have like 5 to 10 characters each, you know. But I think I found a way to crack that. I found 2 ways. One idea was given to me from Gloomhaven, but essentially you just build a deck, which is what computers used to be, right?
Right.
It's a system of cards, right? And so then you just you know, pull from the deck, and then whatever comes up, and you don't shuffle in anything, right? It just builds and builds and builds. Anyway, I think I'm just talking here.
You're telling us about the game that inspired the entire thing that we're doing,
right?
So
Yes, with our rabbits and our you have red internet. No, now you have yellow internet. But yeah, with our rabbits and our possums and our dogs and cats and mice, and then, you know, more animals in the future, but those for right now. Anyway, so but I was really delighted to learn that, you know, you also enjoyed board games. We I think we only played one together, just Sushi Go.
Oh, and I totally forgot that we played that together. Yeah.
Seriously?
I'm sorry.
I think about that like every 4.5 days, you know?
Obviously not. Is that considered a board game? Because it's a card game. It's a card passing game.
Yeah.
Would you
I
call
mean,
it a board game?
well, nowadays what they call it is tabletop gaming.
Oh, okay. Sure. I would agree with the tabletop
Yeah.
because it is most conveniently played with a table.
Yeah. So yeah, we played Sushi Go, but you have you've also got some other good stuff. You have photosynthesis, which is cool. I really enjoy that one.
Yes.
I was playing it wrong for several times because I played it wrong a lot because I thought you just moved the sun in 4 corners, not in a hexagon.
Oh, so you missed a bunch of growth cycles.
Yes, I did.
Oh,
yeah.
you got to read the directions, man.
Yeah, and then I mean, I do read them, but then you also have to remember them, which is the thing, you know?
That is, if you're going to, you know, play by the rules, yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I often forget rules until I need them, and then I remember them. It's not cool, I know.
Oh my gosh. That's why you always got to be playing with somebody who's like, no, it's not in the rule book.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so so first, tell me about you and board games, tabletop games.
I like though how you
games.
like skip over the obvious. There will be no electronic games to talk about. It's all board, or tabletop, we'll call them that. As far as like history of me and games, or
Yeah.
just jump. No, we always played a lot of games when I was a kid, family games and things like that. So some of our favorite ones, and I don't know if they were favorite or if we just didn't have that many games to choose from and they were the only ones we had. I honestly don't know. But we played a lot of Yahtzee because my dad really liked that one. Monopoly, which I have to this day never been really a fan of. And when the game goes on too long, I start just trying to get rid of all my money to see if I can just either lose or I end up winning so big that it ends quickly. Because at some point it's like, well, I'm just done. Life, was it the old school Life? Now it's all
Yeah.
weird because
I
it's
used to
like you
play
draw
that.
your cards and you can, like, now it's not just like you go this path and you get this career. There's all this weird card drawing, and I don't know. I don't like the new Life. It's the old Life. Clue was another big one that I really, really, really enjoyed.
I
That
want
one
to
was
talk
fun.
about Clue for a minute, but I'm going to pause you right here because we both obviously grew up playing the game Life. Did you also
Mhm.
enjoy the serial Life?
Yes.
Me too. Love it. One of my favorites.
It was really good. I don't, do they even still have it? I haven't bought
Oh,
cereal in a while.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not the type of thing. It's like I get cereal because I want cereal that day, and then I eat 3 bowls, and then I really regret it.
And then you're
And
done.
then I
Mhm.
take yeah, then I take a few months off cereal. Um, you know, it's just how it goes. So with
Mhm.
Clue, I wanted to mention, well, first that yeah, I grew up playing Clue. Blaine and I played Clue, loved it, loved it. But at a certain point, like I would try to just start guessing after turn 2,
Right. Just see what
logicking it all
happens.
out.
Mhm.
Um, and I something I wonder about. Do you took the GRE around the same time?
Mhm.
Yeah. And so you had the old third section, right, which was
Yes.
the logic section.
Mhm.
Apparently that, or at least what I was told at UCSD, that was really the only section they paid attention to.
Which is
Um,
very good for me.
yeah. And yeah, like they didn't care how you did in math.
No,
But
math
with,
was very good for me too. It was the verbal section I bombed.
I guess you
I'm,
were,
you know I like math, right? So
guess
math
you
was
were reticent to throw down your skills there,
I would like to point out David just used reticent to mean reluctant.
huh?
Something I have
Not going to happen
recently
again.
been pointed out is not technically right.
Not going to happen
Um,
again. But,
but I'm glad that
but
you tried it out once.
yeah. So what? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I tried it out. I really didn't like it. Uh, oh, felt dirty. But yeah, I forget who I was talking to over it. It might have been Masha Dolinsky, but I forget the GRE came up. And it's just like, oh, we don't pay attention to any of that. The only section we pay attention to is the logic
Mhm.
section. But of course, they got rid of it, um,
Right.
replaced it with an essay. Did you do the essay? Because they were testing it with us.
Yes, yes, I did take the essay as a, yeah, it was like they called it optional, but it totally wasn't because you stayed in the room till you did it, but like it wasn't part of
Uh-huh.
your score. Yeah, yeah, I did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And it was so dumb, wasn't it? It was like something like, tell us what you think about nuclear power or something.
I feel like mine was on something like privacy and government spying or something like, but it was like the same kind of thing where it's like, God, I don't know, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Like
It's
it was,
just,
I feel like I wrote 2 paragraphs to try to show like good faith effort and then I was out.
yep. Yeah. Me too. But yeah, I guess she said that the reason that they pay attention to that is it was a good predictor of uh how good you are at linguistics.
Because
Um,
patterns, that's all it
yeah,
is.
and so going back, we noticed several of us loved doing those logic games growing up, where Mary is twice as tall as Beth, Sally is the middle height, and so on.
I have apps downloaded so I can keep playing them.
Yep. And here we both really enjoyed Clue growing up.
Yes, because it's a logic game.
And it's basically the same type of game, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar. I wonder if there are more linguists who enjoy Clue. That was it.
Because there's also, the strategy in Clue really relies on you picking out which card of your own you're going to test, because you always need to throw in your own cards so you know that, like, if somebody can prove you wrong, you're trying to get them to have to call out their cards. And it's like, what you have in your hand. And as soon as someone can't prove that one thing wrong, then you know that that's one of the answers. So it's like, you just got to know which cards are smart plays so they can't figure out which one is yours.
Yeah. And I also just do so much bluffing. I love it. Throw everybody.
No, so yeah, Clue was always great fun. But again, though, only the old school. The newer board, I am not a fan of. It's got to be the old one.
You mean you don't enjoy Clue Master Detective? Because that was the one that came out in the early 90s.
I'd have to look up which form you're talking about. I'm fairly certain my Clue game that I grew up playing came out in the 1960s, because the box was old, it was super old looking, and that's what I enjoyed.
Oh yeah, and that was a good one. But there was one that came out in the early 90s that added a few new characters. One of which was
new
Sergeant
characters.
Gray.
I'm already out. New characters.
So you don't remember Sergeant Gray?
No, I don't know who Sergeant Gray is, because I like the old school. No.
Yeah,
no.
well, I just
no.
I liked being Miss Peach because she was the hot one.
That's Miss Scarlet. See, it's supposed to be Miss Scarlet who's the hot one.
It was Miss Scarlet until Miss Peach came out.
I'm sorry, but no. Miss Scarlet deserves to maintain her title. And this is why, don't even bother sending me a picture or anything, because I'm still going to say that I refuse to call it.
Pull it up.
I refuse to call it a version of Clue, because it's not the real one. He's seriously looking up a picture.
Pixelated.
Well, of course it is.
It's a little pixelated.
A game from the early 90s, a picture of it.
Well,
while you're looking that up, Parcheesi.
Check this out.
She looks like she belongs on Matlock. She's going to be charged with murder.
She wrote. So yeah, Parcheesi I also played.
That's another good one. Another one that it's hard to find the original forms. This is my problem. I fell in love with games the way they were when I was a kid, and now so many game companies are trying to do things to make them more exciting or something. I don't know. I'm just not happy about that.
You can find them now. And I also want to recommend Board Game Geeks, which is a website, right, that has a whole bunch of rankings for board games. But in the member forums, people do trades. That's how I got Hero Quest, because that's a game that's not available anymore. And if you find it online, it'll be for something like, $500, just because it's rare.
Right.
But yeah, I got that from somebody, fairly inexpensive, and he was just hoping that somebody would want it, and so I got it. Yeah, I'm still waiting to get Battle Masters. That's a fun one. A huge map you lay out. That one was a fun one. But so yeah, why are they going to upgrade Parcheesi? That game is ancient.
No, it is ancient.
Yeah.
Yes. But there are some that, like, the board is different, or there's like fewer spots or something. Like, it's just, some of them don't quite feel the same.
Yeah. So my grandfather is a psychologist, so I grew up with very strange games like the Un game. You familiar with the Un game?
The Un game?
No. Un game.
That's what I said.
It came out in the 1970s. Yeah. It came out in the 1970s, and it was designed by psychologists, I'm pretty sure. And it's a game where it has a beginning, but it doesn't have an end or a point. You just move your characters around the spaces and pick up cards and talk about your feelings. It's literally what you do. the only way to, you know, lose, quote unquote, you don't really lose, but you like lose a turn and have to sit out for a little bit, is if you are unwilling to share. So like, you know, you go and you come up to a space, you pick up a card, and it says something like, you know, describe a time that you were afraid, you know.
No thanks.
And it's like, and if you don't, like, you go to some place that was called, like, you know, like the mire of denial or something like that, like something, you know, where you just sit for a turn.
Wow. Okay.
It's
Yeah, no,
very
I've
70s.
never heard of it, and definitely obviously never played it.
Yeah, it's worth a look.
Now, so beyond those were all sort of board and dice games, right? But then we also played a lot of card games like Gin Rummy and Pinochle. I actually learned that game from a fairly young age. And so we would always play because we had 4 people. And so it was like a built-in Pinochle game in our family. And so yeah, played a lot of those kinds of games. And I honestly, those are the only big ones that I remember playing. Now I have a problem with collecting too many games because I love them all. And there's a shelf in a closet that is so weighted down by board games that I'm pretty sure it's going to fall at some point.
Yeah, same. I mean, same over here. Same over here. It's got another bookshelf to hold the bulk of them, uh, but I'm fine with that. In terms of card games, growing up, I learned a lot of solitaire variants. So, you know,
I only know 2, I think.
well, there's the standard where you could play, of course, you
Mhm.
know, Vegas style or 3 at a time style. But I mean, beyond that, also learned 13 solitaire, clock solitaire,
Clock is
um,
the other one that I know. So that's that one.
um, and then a unique type of solitaire that essentially you could just do it to shuffle the deck. I don't even know what it's called, but you can play it like in the car, because all you do is you take the deck of cards, you pull up 4 cards, and then you look at the first and fourth card. If they are the same suit, you pull out the middle 2. If they're
Okay.
the same number, you pull out all 4. All
Okay.
right. And if they're neither, you just pull another card. And then you're comparing the card you just pulled up to one that's
Hmm.
4 before, and you keep going. And you win essentially. It's like you tie if you have 2 cards at the end. A like half win is if you have 1 card at the end, and then a full win is if you have none.
Okay.
So, but it's like you can get runs where it's like, you know, you pull it up, nope, 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 and so you have this huge hand. But it's like it's kind of just a way to pass time and shuffle the deck just by yourself. It's cool.
Interesting. Yeah, never heard of that one.
And then what is fun though, a lot of fun is double solitaire. You ever played double solitaire?
No, not unless I called it something else.
Okay, so double solitaire, the way that works is you just play solitaire normally, and another person plays solitaire normally, but you share your aces.
Oh, that's interesting. No, but that's
Yeah,
also not solitaire, I would like
no,
to
it's
point out.
not. That's why it's called
It's
double solitaire.
duotaire.
It's double solitaire.
But how can it be double solitaire if solitaire means alone?
Well, how can baseball be a team sport when it's clearly not?
But it is. Oh, I still need to call my dad and ask him about the pickle. I gotta
Yeah.
find out if that's a regional thing.
Of
Oh, and if you're not on
course he's gonna
Discord,
know
then
what a
you don't
pickle
know
is.
about this.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
because I only know the term in baseball rundown, where it's, like a runner is caught between 2 bases trying to advance, but then the ball gets thrown there. So he's just running back and forth trying not to get tagged out. To me, that's a rundown. But David said it's a pickle. And while it is indeed a pickle, because I use pickle to mean like, oh, that's a situation. It's like apparently a specific term in baseball for that situation, but maybe not everywhere, because a lot of other people were like, no, I've never heard it used that way either. So I need to find out.
Bet they're not baseball fans though. Look, this is to me, this is kind of like, let's say, you know, a linguist comes to you and say, hey, have you ever heard of anybody calling plosives stops?
And I'd
Is
be
that
able to
like a
answer.
regional thing?
Are you saying that we don't? That's why I'm going to be asking my dad, who does know.
Yeah, and I think that his reaction would be like, wait, you don't know that?
No, his reaction is going to be he's going to answer me.
And then he'll just hang up the phone and have no response. It'll be, I'll like,
He is
pick up,
always happy to talk baseball.
be like, hey, Dad, do you know like a rundown in baseball? Can it be called a pickle? And he says, yes, hang up. No reaction.
That's exactly what happens. Yes.
It's interesting. I know previously that Jesse's father only responds to her with either yes or no. That's it. He doesn't say anything else.
Again with you and the lies. Now that I know I can't call it anything but what it is, and it's a lie.
He'll talk to everybody else, but just to you, you only get yes and no.
That's it.
Yep. Okay, so I want to tell everybody about something that really surprised me. Maybe it shouldn't have, but something that really surprised me, really shocked me, was when I can't even remember what we were chatting about sometime last year, but you just kind of casually mentioned your nightly D&D game.
It's
And
not nightly, no.
well, in that it happens at night, but
Okay. Nighttime.
I was absolutely shocked, floored, leveled that A, you knew about D&D, B, you approved of it, and C, participated in it. I was absolutely shocked for a number
I don't know
of reasons.
whether D&D should feel judged right now or I should feel judged.
It's you. But like
Okay, fair enough.
you know the world that we grew up in. You know the reputation that D&D had. I just naturally assumed that if you knew about it, you'd be again it.
Not even against. Again. No, and apparently I need to tell you more childhood stories so you know so you have a better image of what I was like. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no,
By the
I
way,
was
this one's a snake. Sorry.
I was never against D&D.
Wow. And at what point in time did you decide to accept it into your life?
Honestly, I never even thought much about it because like none of my friends played it, like when I was in middle or high school, um, or even college. I just didn't have the group around me, so it never like I knew people played it and I knew it was a game and it sounded cool, but like I just didn't have the people around me who also thought it sounded like it would be a fun time. And so it wasn't until we moved to Texas that I found people who were familiar with D&D and were patient enough to be willing to play with somebody who like legit had no idea what they were doing. And so Will and I bought a D&D starter kit so that way we would have, like some basic directions and things like that. And yeah, we had friends come over and basically like participate, and one of them DM'd for us so that way we could get the experience. And then once we started that, we joined in with some other friends who were looking for new members to start a new campaign. And yeah, we started playing. Now, rather unfortunately, we've kind of fallen off it because as good as it can be on Discord or Zoom or whatever, it's just not the same if you're not at the same table. And
Yep.
honestly, like all of us were kind of like, so
Yep.
so we haven't played, like we tried it a few times, had some fun, but it just wasn't the same. So I honestly haven't played my own character in D&D for almost a year now.
And your character is?
Elspel's Pebble Gem.
What?
That's her name. She's a gnome.
Can
And her
you
name
say
is,
the first name again?
the first name is Elsbells.
As in Hell's Bells without the H.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And Pebble Jim is her last name.
Yeah. And didn't bother with a conlang name?
Oh no, because that that would be separate from what other people would know her as. So
Why?
no, her name is Elsbells. Just go with it. Did I just again destroy your confidence?
Dear listeners, I am trying my best. I am trying my best to segue into language here. It's just not working.
I did create a language for gnomes. We can talk about that. But no,
You
we've already
did.
talked about
You
that. We've
created
already
a
talked about that.
language for gnomes. And
Yes.
then you had the opportunity to play a gnome character of your own design.
Mhm.
And you named it Els Bells.
Yes, because it matched her spirit. And it's really fun to introduce yourself because you can like, I'm Elsbells, and everybody's like, oh shit, it's good. It's good stuff.
And there's nothing in the Gnoma language that you felt adequately
No.
represented her
Also,
spirit.
I do want to say that my gnome language is for garden gnomes, and the gnomes of D&D are not garden gnomes.
I
The word
suppose,
gnome gets overused and over applied to many different things. And I just want to point out that I'm aware and sensitive to gnome culture.
yeah, I think
And
we all know
I
it.
don't want to use the garden gnome language for, D&D gnome.
We all know it's something that you take very seriously.
Indeed. And she's a wizard. So
Hmm.
that's who she is.
Wow,
It's
you just
Tinkerer.
went in and made a wizard, huh?
Oh yeah.
That's one of the difficult ones.
Oh, but it's so much fun. And it again matches her character because they learn from books. And her character is very book smart, but very not life smart.
I
And
just
it
can't
works well
imagine.
for, can't imagine what.
No, go ahead.
No, it works very well too for people who don't fully know all the D&D things because you end up doing really stupid things that if you were a better player you wouldn't do. But it's like I know the spells. But, beyond that, you're stuck with whatever I think of. And that's when I get into situations like, for instance, in a recent campaign, and by recent, I mean the last one I played in like a year ago. I had the skill to build a bomb. And so I did because it sounded like a good idea at the time. And then I blew up an entire inn and almost died because I didn't have the dexterity. I rolled a nat 1 while I was building a bomb.
Oh my.
Yeah, it was bad. But on the knowledge parts, I was rolling nat 20s all the way through. So it was like I was doing great. And then I almost killed my entire party.
Oh, I was about to say I couldn't imagine playing anything other than a bard because
Um,
what I mainly want to do is convince people to do what I want them to do and play music and make
Goodness,
sure
no,
that everybody has a good time.
I'm there for the adventure.
Roman, I want you to carefully consider what you're thinking about doing. Roman, how dare you? How dare you? Get
And
yourself down.
just so everybody else knows, I have no idea what Roman just did. It was off camera, but it almost got David to stand up.
He knows that he's not supposed to be up there. You know that. You little fiend. Absolute little fiend, you. Come here. Come here and accept your punishment. I'm going to scratch your belly.
And this is the part of the podcast where David forgets that we're recording sound only and is just talking to his cat.
I didn't forget. Well, you think I'm not gonna? Little fiend. That's a good boy, Roman. See, that's a good choice. That's a positive choice. There you go, my boy. Now stay right there and don't do the naughty thing that you're thinking of.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just going to keep talking, but I'm going to keep looking at him because that's the only way I can make sure that he behaves. All right. I'm thinking about you, Roman. Okay. So, oh yeah, I did want to mention, oh, I was so disappointed. I did a one shot with a friend of mine where I brought my bard, my dragonborn bard, and it was this one shot where there is a society of cats that lives amongst the humans, unbeknownst to everybody, and there's a little adventure that you go with for the cats, and yeah, once we started doing this, I knew that there was a reason why she was saving this one for me. And there's this cat that's helping you because he wants you to help get something back, and it turns out, of course, he is betraying you at the end, and he is really the bad guy. And so, but at the end, when he was going to, because we successfully did it and everything, it was narrow, but we did it, and so he was going to be, jailed for his punishment. I made an urgent plea to this cat. I said, we could do this, but I can get us out of here. And we can go off, and you can be my cat, and we can be happy forever. And this is with my bard, who has like an 18 in charisma. And so I went to roll persuasion, which he had a +5 to.
Oh no.
And I rolled a 1.
Oh, it's a sad day.
It broke my little heart. And so he went off to prison.
You tried. You tried.
I did.
You failed, but you tried.
Yes, I did. Yeah. So an interesting thing to note is that as we kind of get back to our main topic of language, but so last semester you debuted a really, really unique class, which was examining language use in D&D specifically.
Yes.
And so tell us about like your idea in delving into that, because of course it wasn't like conlang use in D&D specifically, but it was more language use in D&D.
Right. Yeah. So we were looking at issues of language and identity and showing how, especially people who really get into the role-playing aspect, how people use language markers differently to match who their character is in terms of who they are in the game with relation to all the other characters. And then further, how you can actually analyze the language differences between when a person is, being a player versus a character. So like in player mode, you may stop and ask the DM like, hey, can I roll for initiative? Versus, you're like, your character wouldn't ask the DM that, 'cause your character's in the story. And so just looking at the ways that language can be used differently. And of course, since like not everybody is going to have access to some really solid players who can differentiate very well between character and player, we used a lot of Critical Role videos so that way they could watch, professionals playing D&D and looking at how you can actually look for very specific language features to show differences, not only in how the messages are composed and how they are spoken, but also like if you start really thinking about content and what they're saying versus what they're not saying. Because I think a lot of times we forget like how much you know about your own character, but how much nobody else at the table is supposed to know that. And you may end up talking about it as players outside of the game, but in the world, the other characters have to pretend like they don't know something your player, your character has gone through. And so it's really interesting when you start really looking at how do they ask questions or how do they interact with each other to create this world within a game.
So
Yes.
this reminds me of the weirdest thing. Were you a Seinfeld watcher?
Yes, but like one of the Seinfeld watchers who would always just see it as reruns. And so it's
Yeah.
like, I'm pretty sure I've seen every episode, but in pieces.
No, I'm roughly the same boat. Okay, do you remember the episode where Kramer, his phone number got mixed up with movie phone?
No. Oh, maybe it's one of those things where like if I started watching the episode, I'd probably be like, oh yeah, I know this one. But off the top of my head, no, but that
Mm.
sounds like a great episode.
Well, for younger folk, back before the internet, or even in the early
Oh my
days of the
gosh.
internet, you
Yes,
would,
we need to explain this.
yeah, if you didn't, in order to find out what movies were playing, you either had to go to your local theater, or if that was inconvenient, look at the newspaper.
Mhm.
But later, say you didn't get a newspaper or you couldn't find it, you could actually call into a free phone number, and it was called movie phone. And by punching things in, you could find out what movies were playing at many different cinemas in your area. And there was a guy who's like had this movie phone voice, and it was very specific. Hello, welcome to movie phone. If you
Yes.
would like to, and then you could punch in either a specific movie or a specific theater, and they would tell you the show times. Anyway, so in this episode, he changed his number, and his number is, I guess, like one off from movie phone. It was like, 1-800, like, new filk or something, as opposed to new
Right.
film. And so he's just started to pretend to be the movie phone guy.
Oh my
And
gosh.
but the thing is, he was doing it pretty successfully. And so, like, at one point, it was like, he's like, go ahead and type in the first three letters of the movie you'd like to see. And then you hear him listening on the phone, and he just hears boop, boop, boop. He's like, he doesn't know what to do with that. And so
Right.
he's like, and then he's like, in character, he's like, why don't you tell me the movie that you'd like to see?
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so somehow being in character and like pretending that you don't know things, that reminded me of that. Because there have been a number of situations where, especially this is the best one, where there's two characters, A and B, and B knows something, but his character doesn't, let's say.
Right.
And then A, neither he nor his character knows it,
Hmm.
right? And so it's like the person is sitting here going like, where it's just like, why don't you, uh, did you get any book, from the dungeon that you just searched? No. It's like, are you sure you don't remember picking up a book that might have some sort of a particular colored cover? No. And he's just like sitting there going, oh my God, how can you not remember the fact that you picked up this book with a purple cover and we need it right now? And it's like, but he can't. Oh man. Anyway, those are the best. So I was curious what so ultimately what happened is that I ran some one shots for your
Right.
class.
Yes.
And then other members of the class reviewed the videos of them,
Hmm.
right? And I was always curious, but never curious enough to actually do in the work to go and read stuff. What were some of the results? Like, do they find interesting stuff?
They did. And a lot of them, like a lot of the comments that were made there, and some of them were sent to me directly. But a lot of the comments were really based around how different the one shot turned out for like so many different reasons, but specifically thinking about especially like the first moves, because when they walk into a room, because like the beginning of the one shot is really the same for all four groups because they're all given the exact same scenario and setup to the point. Well, and David made sure he gave them the same scenario all the way up to the point where like they get to interact with somebody. And the way that it went from there, there were still some similar aspects for many of the groups. But what they really noticed was the differences between like when people chose to interact with these specific things. Like there were some animals in the middle of a room, and some groups immediately went to try to save these animals that looked like they were, caged and maybe not so happy. Other groups completely ignored them and did like perimeter checks. And like, so it was just really interesting how that made such a difference for where they went from there, including how they asked questions, how they interacted with the other people, the NPCs, the non-playing characters, and even how they interacted as groups were very different, like how they actually, some groups didn't quite work together. One group straight up like split in half and they killed
Yeah.
the other half of the group. I think by accident, but I'm still not totally sure. But just the dynamics of how they interacted and got to the end, and the ending, it was really 4 different endings because, you know, one group totally survived and did awesome. We had a group completely die. Just like 100%. And so it was just, that was, I think, the biggest focus that they worked on. Especially with that very opening, there was an opening conversation with like the 4 of them were they're hired to be bodyguards or whatever. And they go up and they meet somebody guarding the door and they have to get entry. And like just that very opening conversation, a lot of people focused on just how different it was depending on what kind of character was speaking and what kind of mannerisms they took on. And yeah, so that was really where they focused it. And it was very interesting because I sat through all 4 of those one shots and they
Yes,
were
you
very
did.
interesting to compare.
I was really surprised by when characters would disobey orders they were given and when they wouldn't.
Right.
Like none of them tried to get into that kitchen.
No, no. So not only were a lot of the characters um, more rule followers in terms of like a lot of them were kind of like aligning themselves on the D&D alignment chart in terms of, you know, like neutral good or whatever. Or lawful good, neutral and good would be.
Chaotic neutral in the streets, lawful good in the sheets. We know it.
These are my students, David. Uh, so like one character in particular, he knew he was basically going to be killing himself to try to save another character. And as a player commented on that and was like, oh gosh, this is not going to end well for me, but this is my character. And so then, you know, went back into character mode. And when I forget if there was a fire or just arrows everywhere or what was happening, but like he literally knew that essentially his character was going to die, but he couldn't go against what he thought his character would do in that situation. And so you do get like interesting moments like that where you get meta commentary from the player. And then it's like, but here I go anyway. Also very interesting is how well people use pronoun switches. When it's like as a character, they really get into it and say, oh, I do this, or I'm talking to so and so versus, oh, well, my character walks up to so and so. And so those are some player
Yeah.
differences too, because some people really stayed third person the whole time and didn't really get into it. And other people, like some people were even playing with accents and everything. So that was
Mhm.
also some differences in players.
That would actually be an interesting study. You know, just it'd have to be a huge one. But
Mhm.
what you do is you try to see how long does it take somebody to switch from my character to I. Some will
Mhm.
start that way, others won't. How long does it take them to switch? And is
Well,
there any commonalities? Hmm.
it's
Sounds
also
like a
very
psychology thing.
interesting in terms of looking at the referent for when you get the I and me, because especially when you get into games like watching Critical Role do their videos, when they're in just player mode chit chatting among themselves, like whether it's a break or they're all just teasing each other or whatever, um, one player will say to another like, oh, can you believe what I just did, meaning my character, meaning the character did it.
Yeah.
And so it's just like it's really interesting the different reference that you have to keep track of in a role playing game to really be able to follow who's who and what's going on. It's also interesting when you get situations where one player identifies as one gender, but then plays a character who identifies as another gender.
Hmm.
Specifically because, and this happens in Critical Role all the time, if you watch their second campaign, because Sam plays Not, who is a female goblin, and he identifies male. And so anytime the players are talking to him as a player, they use he, but sometimes they'll accidentally use he for his character. And in his character's voice, he'll always stop and go like, I know I'm not pretty, I'm a goblin, but I am a girl. So it's just really funny because it's just trying to figure out what pronoun forms to use, whether you're in player or character mode, can be really intense. So anyway, yeah, that's a good study.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so language.
Because I have never used a conlang in D&D. I just never have. I've also never like DM'd or I've never DM'd or anything.
Why do you not want to share your conlangs with your other D&D kin?
Quite frankly, I don't think any of them would want to do the work to try to figure it out.
Oh, you don't need to do work. You just use it.
Start talking in a conlang.
No, but I mean, you know, your character's name and the names of things that your character finds, things like that, you know.
If I knew the story ahead of time and knew what words I would need in my language for what my character would find, then it wouldn't really be a D&D campaign, would it?
You could do it in between sessions.
And be like, wait, let's go back to last week. Remember when I found that thing? I know what to call it now.
Yeah, a dingle hopper.
That's a perfect name.
Yeah. By the way, you know the guy that did that voice was on an episode of Murder, She Wrote.
I did not know that. I don't think it will take much for most people to know that you know way more about Murder, She Wrote than I ever did, even though I've seen pretty much all of the episodes and may have even seen them before you started watching them. I don't know, but you know much more than I do.
Yeah, I do know. I pay a lot of attention.
Nice.
Can't wait for next month's podcast, which is about Murder, She Wrote.
Murder, She Spoke.
Oh man, I would love to see, you know, Jessica Fletcher engage with somebody who's creating their own language.
That would be something.
You're telling me you created your own pronouns, verbs, things like that?
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna need to start writing some episodes of Murder, She Wrote, I think.
Some fanfic.
No, I want them to be produced as stage plays.
Oh, but wouldn't that still be considered fanfic as a start?
It depends where you draw that line.
Okay.
You know, the lumpers, of course, are going to say, well, everything is fanfic. You know, kind of like the conlangers that say that it's impossible to create an a priori conlang.
Because it comes from some piece of a language that has been used somewhere along the way.
Yeah, and because we all speak a language, and so we can't know what it's like to create language without having a language.
That is, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
That's lumpers.
I find the attitude a bit churlish myself, but you know.
I find it a little bit too theoretical to give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, call it what you want. Here's what I'm going to call it, and that's good.
I will close on this note. The show that I've liked working on the least, or one of the least definitely, is my favorite show that I've ever worked on, Penny Dreadful.
Really?
I think it's the highest quality thing I've ever worked on, in terms of writing and acting. I think it's wonderful, and I really, really enjoyed it. But it was awful to work on. But they came out with a version of Clue that was Penny Dreadful themed, and I bought it, and it's still in the plastic. I've never played it because, you know, I don't have anybody to play it with, because you don't want to just pull out Clue Penny Dreadful and play it with people who've never seen the show. Like, what's the point, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm waiting. One day.
Someday. Isn't, no, that's not the same one. No, Neil Patrick Harris, he was in something that was
Dr.
totally
Horrible.
different. Thank you. I was introduced to both of them around the same time. So for some reason, I always get their names mixed up.
They couldn't be more different.
And yet it's the names that I mix up. I'm not saying I mix the shows up, just the names.
Very similar, you know. Well, actually, I guess you're right. Horrible and dreadful. I take it back. I was gonna poke a little fun, but I
Oh,
rescind the fun poking.
are you reticent to do that?
Mm.
And now he stopped.
That was me being reticent, unwilling to speak. Okay. Anyway, I by the way, I assume you haven't seen Penny Dreadful.
No, not yet.
It is a high recommend. It is, but you know what it's more or less about, right?
Off the top of my head, no.
19th century classic, like monsters and supernatural stuff, but all living at the same time in London.
Okay.
So they're vampires, Frankenstein, Dorian Gray is in it, Alan Quatermain, or an Alan Quatermain-like guy, werewolf.
Okay.
But done very, very seriously. And so there is, you know, blood and gore.
Which you know how I am with that, so.
I know.
Gentle souls.
Yeah. All right. So, I think that at this point we are going to close the podcast in the way we usually do, which is I say some things and then Jesse struggles for last words, right?
That sounds about right. That sounds exactly like every other podcast we've ever done. When really the only words you need to remember, well, do you want me to just close it out with the only thing you need to even remember to say?
Go for it.
Okay, so you have no last words?
Oh, darn it.
All right, so that's step one, is put David
Wait.
on the spot.
Actually do.
Okay.
And this is my recommendation for those patrons that are on Discord. Keep throwing us those podcast ideas. And if this wasn't what you were expecting when you suggested this, then be more in depth.
Give us a script.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. That's a good last word.
Excellent.
Okay, so the next stage, once we put you on the spot, the next thing is to say, stay grammar. And the very final thing, talk to you next time. Bye, everyone.